this is when you've got to earn your lunch, because this is a discussion, right? Discussion requires two-way input. So I'm only going to sit here and just talk to you a little bit, because I just want you to talk to me and ask me questions. But I want you to talk to our panel. Importantly, we've got to hope we've got everybody here. So you obviously met Michael. Wasn't that fantastic? Haven't you all learned? It's really interesting to see how things are made. Quite fascinating. So I'm sure there's loads of questions which we're already going to, start with Michael there. But today we're going to hopefully have with us. We're going to have Ryan. Have we got Rainer? Rainer, can you hear us?
Rainer's there, but currently muted. Rainer, you need to unmute.
Have you got Rainer?
Definitely there, but definitely still muted.
Okay.
Can you hear me? I am here.
Excellent. Are you coming on camera?
I can turn on my.
Come on, let's see you as well. Welcome. So this is now Rainer. Let me get your name wrong. Hengstman. Is that correct, Rainer? Is that I pronounced it correctly? Vice President of Additional Materials. So now we've talked about leather. We've talked about alternative materials. Now we're going to throw in additional materials. And at some point in a few minutes, Rainer's going to explain a little bit more, because Rainer's from Isotantec, which obviously we all know as a tanner and making leather. So we want to sort of hear a little bit more in a moment about additional materials. Clavio, have we got you there, Clavio, as well? Are you joining us from Brazil?
Hello, hi, how are you doing?
Hi, how are you today?
Very good, thank you.
Waking up, are you? We've got bedtime for Ryan soon. Have you got your pajamas on? Are you? We're hoping you're going to join us on camera. Are you with us? We lost him. No, we're still there. Still there, Clavio, you're going to come on camera. Try. Okay, have we still lost Katie at the moment?
Yeah, we don't have Katie at the moment.
Just try another computer.
Okay.
I'll give you the nod when she arrives.
Okay, that's okay. Well, Ryan, as you, we've got you definitely. Would you like to introduce yourself? I'll get a little bit of your background, just to set the scene for them. So we've obviously got people here in the room. We've got around about 65 people in the room. Nothing to intimidate you, obviously. And we've got about another 20, I think, remote. So the key thing today is also all your remote participants, please don't forget, you can ask questions too. Will's going to be fielding the questions on the chat.
Yes, yes.
So if you've got any questions, Will, just interrupt me, because that's always the best idea. But sorry, Rainer, would you like to give us a little bit of who's Rainer and what your background is with Isotantec?
Rainer's currently muted.
You're muted, Rainer.
So
That's it.
unmute. But I have to mention, I hear myself. I have a very heavy echo. So I already dialed out and again. Is there anything you can do? No.
Everything's fine this end, and we've only got one microphone. So we can cope.
Well, I don't mind sharing myself. Let me just start. Okay, so my name is Rainer Hengstman. I'm currently working for Isotantec. Most of the leather people most likely know Isotantec. Just a little bit of, in terms of my background, I'm a chemical scientist. Spent 17 years with Puma. I was the global director of sustainability for Puma. Sorry, I always have to wait until I finish hearing myself before I proceed. This is the technology I have to deal with. So after Puma, I worked with Hugo Boss, senior head of sustainability, and then I went back to Vietnam. So I'm not in Vietnam. And as mentioned already, Isotantec. We are a global tannery company, most of you know. And ISA decided to set up a department which is COSMS, called Creation of Sustainable Materials. So a tannery making material which is not leather, but sort of fits into the portfolio. Might raise a question mark for many of you, but this is what we are doing now. And we have developed a material, and that's why Christy already mentioned it. We do not call it an alternative. I mean, just to make this clear, we have developed a material additional to leather, because we think the leather we develop in Tantec, following our light concept, it's already super sustainable, following the low impact towards the environment KPIs, but we can consider this as an alternative. And now here comes the word alternative to plastics.
Okay,
And
sorry, Randy. Let me stop you at that point, because I think we want to just meet all the other participants, and then we're going to come back and we're going to ask you questions about your alternative material, because I can even see in the room now people are going, well, what is it? Why? Why have they done this? So just let me leave those with you for a moment. And I'm just going to see,
Sure.
Joe, are you with us?
Yes,
Ah, great. Are you going to come on camera?
I am on camera.
You are? Oh, okay, I can just see a scene, that's all. Okay. Okay, brilliant. Well, welcome. Have you heard the discussion so far? You've been able to hear okay from Brazil?
Yes, I'm hearing perfect. No problem.
Excellent. Right, well, in that case, Flavio, will you please just give a little bit of introduction to yourself and a little bit what your role is at Vancoros and what Vancoros is doing as a company?
Yeah, my name is Clébio. I'm sales director of Vancoros. Vancoros is, I'm in Vancoros for 17 years already. And Vancoros is a company that started dealing with salted hides. And as the time passed, we started with wet blue operations and crust operations as well. And in parallel to that, through the years, we also saw the need to create a chemical industry to provide us raw material, chemicals for the wet bluing process. And now we are also about to get ready a gelatin factory, also connected to the leather business as a part of the whole system of the leather, but having leather as the core business. And as product, we sell wet blue for the different customers of the world, the different types of customers. So shoes, upholstery, and automotive. And the crust, we are majorly directed to automotive.
Thank you, Flavio. Okay, we'll come back in a little while, because I know, again, coming from Brazil, as a town, that you face some particular challenges, potentially because of where you are based, and also, again, with your supply chains, etc. So we'll come back to some of those in a few minutes.
Okay.
Katie, sorry, Flavio. Katie, you're now with us. I'm glad
Yes.
you've been able to make a connection. So how are you, Katie?
Here, thank you for your patience. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear very clearly and we can see you, so that's great.
Good,
So
good.
would you like to give a little introduction? I know you're a newcomer to the Sustainable Leather Foundation, now working with Deborah, but you've obviously got a history going right back to the University of Northampton, haven't you? Perhaps you'd like to give a little bit of background as an ex-student, so take note to the students in the room. You could soon be doing something like Katie.
Yes, thank you. Well, it's really truly an honor to be here with all of you today. You know, my passion really has started in undergrad with environmental policy and found my way in leather, and I'm quite frankly never going to go back. You know, doing my MSc at Northampton really gave me the opportunity to study sustainable practices in leather. And this carried through me with the last 10 years working in automotive and really having an opportunity to see how sustainable practices can be, you know, exemplified through automotive leather. And recently I've made the change to work for the Sustainable Leather Foundation, and it's a great opportunity for us to truly find a transparent and holistic way to showcase leather's, great attributes. So I'm really excited about this opportunity, and I hope that we can really talk about, a little bit of the automotive side and how the alternative materials and leathers really play an important role together in automotive. So I'm happy to bring both of those together here today.
I think as well, if you don't mind me saying, Katie, you've also quite a lot of experience with, Michael mentioned the Higg Index earlier, and I know there's been some industry, Kerry Senior's in the room, there's been some industry take on some of the way the Higg Index has been operating recently, and maybe we'll touch on that a little bit as well, but for those that don't really understand quite what's, how leather is portrayed, let's say maybe, and how leather is, what's the word, scored in some respects, isn't it? How it's actually given an equivalent score with other materials, and that doesn't always come to, it's not always to its best, to its detriment in some cases.
Yes.
So when should we start then? Well, I sort of feel like we should go back to Rainer, because you started talking to us about this move towards additional materials. So are you able to give us a little bit more insight into what that really means, and also what made that decision as a tannery to move into a different type of material? Are you muted? Sorry, can't hear you.
No, it's muted, then I'm muted. Rainer, still muted on Rainer.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
Good. I don't know, but here, especially in Vietnam, once in a while, sharks like the underground cable, and out of 3 cables, 2 cables have been eaten by sharks. That's why there's a different problem with the transmission. So again, I do hear myself.
We have
It is what it is, so we just have to live with this. But coming back to the point, look, I mean, there's quite some movement in the leather industry, or in the media going on about leather, and I had as well the amazing possibility to join the Sustainable Leather Foundation, but not representing leather, but the additional materials, and I do think it fits perfectly. And I always hear alternatives. I don't think we are working towards alternatives. Though I am in the additional material section of ISA, I personally like leather really much. It's an amazing material. There's no question. It's sustainable. I can just go ahead. But the thing is that the market changed. The perspective, the perception of the consumers of the brands changed. Whether right, whether wrong, I don't want to judge. But the thing is, in order to adapt to the market, we thought, okay, we from ISA, we supply leather following the light concepts. I mentioned already light, low investment towards the environment. We thought, okay, why not looking into additional materials, but use existing technology we already have within the tanneries. So we don't have invented anything new, but just try to use what is available. But how can we implement this with additional materials? And we then finally found out it sort of perfectly fits, right? I mean, we have many customers which buy, of course, leather from us, but as a one-stop shop, saying, look, we can offer the leather to the customers, but as well we can say, look, we have as well this additional material. We don't, again, we do not call this an alternative to leather, not at all. And I don't think it will be an alternative to leather. It will also be an additional material, And so we went into this, and yeah, well, I mean, we came up with a material which is now available on the on the market. It's called Hyphalite. You might have seen it already on LinkedIn. Meeting demands of the footwear industry, and again, beside each other. And I do think it's an amazing opportunity for tanneries to, I mean, establish a business beside the leather. Leather definitely has its strengths in the industry. Period. There's no question about it. But the perception of the consumers, of the customers, I mentioned already whether right or wrong, is there. We want to have no, I don't want to use the word alternative.
Don't we use the word alternative?
Use alternatives. We want to have as well something else beside leather. So we said, okay, let's move into this.
So are these customers, are these a different customer to your leather customer, or are these the same people who want more than one material sourced from yourself?
Oh, Chris, the echo is so heavy. Can you please repeat?
So are these customers, are your customers people who want a different material to leather, or do they want this again as an addition to their leather that they already buy from you, because they're going to use the two materials in combination perhaps?
Okay, put it this way. These customers are still buying, of course, buying our leather,
Okay.
but I think based on the paradigm shift in the industry, looking for what else is available on the market. Right? What else is available on the market, and which serves the requirements of the consumer goods industries, which meets KPIs. I mean, look, we already had this amazing presentation of Michael just before the panel, and this was actually, I have to admit, amazing for us just to see where we are, where we have to adjust, where we have to go. Right.
So I was going to say, so look, going back to Michael's presentation, are the challenges that Michael has seen with these other materials, are these things that you are able to overcome? Your additional material, you know, would you comparable?
Well, yes. The thing is, I mean, we have put it this way: we have leather, we have synthetics, and those, let me call it the next gen materials. I mean, you know, this is how it, you know, how the materials are being called, next gen or new materials. Where are those materials? We don't have standards how to test, right? Test them. Is it leather? No, it's not. It's not leather. Synthetics. Well, big question mark. Maybe, maybe not. So how can we test them? So therefore,
I would argue the testing is the easy part, because I think by both myself coming from Sartre and Michael from Filk, we would say you look at the end product and you look at fitness for purpose, irrespective of the material. If that material is going into automotive upholstery, or if that material is going into footwear, you have got guidelines and tests that we could apply to any material to see if they meet those requirements.
Christine, two other metrics that will be observed here.
Can you hear? Sorry, can you hear Rainer? Can you hear Steve?
Steve Tranter from Trumpler, Germany. There are two other metrics which could be used to measure here. One is the energy consumption of the production process, drying, as we discussed earlier, and the cost of the article in comparison to leather that they are producing. How does that look?
Could you hear that, Rainer?
well, Chris, I heard a lot of echo.
Do you want to try it again, Steve?
What? How does the energy consumption comparison look for the manufacture of your different materials? compared
No,
to that?
these are okay. These are not different material. Well, they're certainly different, but additional materials. Just let's stick to the nomenclature. As I was saying, we started, I would say, almost 3 years ago, and due to COVID, basically we started really like the Microsofts in a garage, in Tom's garage in Germany. This is where we started. Finally, then we moved to Germany. Sorry, to Vietnam. But the material we have developed so far is really performing according to requirements. So we can really achieve KPIs. For example, the Vemplex, the Balaflex, just name it, from the footwear industry, and we still have a bio-based content of above 90%, right? So it was a long way, but it's now available. I don't know whether I answered your question. Again, apologies. It's the echo. It's difficult to hear you.
Yeah, I think yes. I think Rainer, we're getting the you have comparable metrics from what you're saying.
Excuse me?
I think from what you're saying that you can have comparable metrics for your leather and your additional material. That in terms of performance, you're saying that you can meet the performance requirements.
Parallel metrics. This is what
comparable. They compare well.
Comparable. Yes. I would say so.
So from a tanner's perspective then, if we've got tanners in the room, which we have quite a few tanners here, because we see diversification in lots of industry. I think here in the UK, the dairy industry diversified suddenly into having farms and ice cream production, and have gone into different things associated with their industries. Would you recommend to any tanner in the room to also perhaps have an open mind to also looking at what else they can produce in their production plants, in their tanneries? Because the consumer is changing. In many parts of the world, the consumer is changing. And whether we like it or not, leather is always the consumer's first choice. I mean, that's a different argument there, really, whether you can convert them to that. But so as a tanner, should a tanner be looking at diversification?
Chris, as you said it, whether like it or not, the markets are changing. I said already, leather has no question, has its point in the industry. Whether tanneries want to adapt, want to adjust, want to add, not change, want to add an additional material, this is really simply up to them. But what I was saying at the very beginning in the introduction, we are using, and I would say all the other existing additional / alternative materials on the market, we are using technology which we have in the tannery. So there is no rocket science. You just have to look into it. What can be done without a huge investment to have, beside leather, another opportunity?
I'm just going to ask, actually, I've got just a question coming from the room, Rainer. Yeah, David, would you like to comment?
I think the key point here, Madam Chairperson, is why are the consumers looking at alternative materials? What is it that they may not like about leather?
Okay,
That is the elephant in the room, surely. That question has to be answered. So why?
Well,
any comment on that or pick up on that?
yeah, there's a lot of going on, and I hope Katie as well in the call might support me. You know, there is activism from NGOs such as PETA, such as whatever, saying, well, cows are only being slaughtered because of the house, sorry, because of the hides, right? And if this is going on, leather is then, sorry, milk is just being a byproduct of the milk industry or of the dairy industry. I think it is a perception of the consumers, and it is as well what I am coming from a not leather side, just to make it clear, and being in the brand for 17 years. I think more needs to be done on the leather side to communicate the right thing.
Yeah.
And this is, to be quite simply, lacking over the last years. The leather industry is amazing, is doing amazing stuff, right? But it's not
It's the communication.
This is exactly, Chris, the point. And the perception of the consumers out on the street is saying, oh my God, these poor animals are being killed because of the hides, because they don't understand it. They don't understand that the leather industry is taking hides, which are basically waste. Well, I don't have to educate you, right? Or to mention this, but this is the point. This is from a non-leather guy, a message to the leather community. There is much to do. There's much to do. Get it right, because again, leather has an amazing stand, but it needs to be communicated. But in the meantime, because simply of the demand, vegan, vegetarian, you just name it, right? You have to offer to the market because there's a demand. But again, we never use alternative. We just say additional.
Just a moment, Ryan. I've got a question coming from the room from John Avery, or a comment. Question, comment, John?
Yeah, well, I'd like to see what the panel responds with. I'm wondering if the development of additional material is a commercial imperative to replace lost revenue because customers are not buying as much leather.
Katie, yes, sorry.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I can kind of give at least some insight from what I've experienced in automotive. I think there is this greenwash story of alternatives or additional materials that are, seen by these indexes to be better comparable in terms of their environmental impact. But the other piece is really this cost that you brought up. And, if we look at particularly the automotive sector, much more of the money that's going towards the vehicles is going into the increased technology, all of the additions that are now in vehicles that we never had before. So I think that in addition to them not wanting, maybe the consumer maybe not wanting it because of personal reasons, which we do know is definitely impacting us, whether it's animal welfare, veganism, et cetera. I think there's also an internal component, particularly that has affected automotive, where the buyers are at a crossroads of where to spend their money on their vehicle. And so I think that's an opportunity for leather to say, people want this in their product, in their vehicle, but we've got to be creative. And I think part of this, I go back to maybe some of the students in the room and some others that are maybe not necessarily on the tannery side, but on the product manufacturer side, is how can we work up front in the design of these vehicles to say, how am I going to go to the OEMs, the Audi, the BMWs of the world, and design with them a seat that has leather in it that can be cost effective, or have leather that coordinates with other natural materials or other additional materials in the vehicle. So I think there's an opportunity for us to not only just present the right metrics about leather, but also to present what are the new opportunities for the design upfront before they even choose what materials are going on the seat, allow leather to be part of that design conversation upfront. Because cost is a big impact, and leather has to become competitive in that sphere. And I do believe that it will become when we are designing up front and we are showing them, hey, if you use leather, you probably won't have to use a foam backing that you will have to use on a vinyl product. Or if you pair leather with a natural fabric, you may increase your bio-based content in the vehicle. There's other ways to approach it. So I don't know if that digressed too much from the cost story, but I think from the automotive side, that's what I have seen in my past.
Yeah, yes, thank you, Katie. David?
Yeah,
I think
Yeah.
Katie's absolutely right here. I think the leather industry is far too reactive. We're not proactive enough. I think by the time we are approaching the automotive firms and saying, look, why are you going wet white? Why are you going away from pro? You know, that they've already made up their minds what they want to do.
Yeah.
So we need to be, as an industry, far more proactive in presenting to them the benefits.
Exactly.
Yes.
yeah, I agree.
Nodding heads, you know, it's just how we go about it in a uniform manner.
Yeah, thank you, David. I'm just conscious of the moment we haven't spoken to Clavio very much. So I'm going to try and take off a slightly different track. You're in Brazil. Now we all know that Brazil is a country full of meat lovers. I'm sure there must be some vegetarians and vegans in Brazil, but I don't know what percentage. So what would you say is your biggest challenges? Do you have the same challenge, or is it something completely different?
Yes, Christy, we also follow worldwide market as we operate in many countries. And I agree with Rainer and Katie and Michael. The leather is, you can see it's always been, we have been always approached as a first choice. But indeed, we are not communicating well and doing the proper demonstration of all the sustainable factors that involves leather, and this we really need to improve. And I believe this is happening in the recent last year, let's say, with they come up with recent like Leather Naturally and other institutions that are each time more promoting leather, but I believe still a lot to be done. And I believe that also there will be space for these additional materials as well, because if we analyze through the last years, leather availability, leather generation, let's say, is reducing year after year because of the improvement also of the livestock business, that they are improving the productivity, the yield of meat per animal. So they are, I think that leather, I can see today, it's also been selected for premium products. So we can see in automotive, the premium cars are keeping leather and requiring it in its more natural condition, like full grain. And the corrected grain hides, they are, I think they lost already some space for the alternatives or additional materials, but also it's finding a place as well. And it's also finding the use for it in other options like gelatin and other applications of leather. So, and talking about Brazil, I can say we are been receiving a lot of pressure indeed, due to mainly about deforestation. But since, for example, in our case, since came up initiatives, certification initiatives like LWG or others, Vancoros has also always been sensitive to that, and also the whole Brazilian industry. And in Brazil, we have very strong legislation in terms of environmental practice, and this also made us improve a lot on the use of natural resources as well. So we have very good water recycling systems. We are able to minimize the use of water, of clean water. So use of energy, which is mainly in Brazil here for from reforestation eucalyptus, so it's very good energy. And in terms of traceability, we have always communicated this to the suppliers, and recently, as increased more this type of requirement, we are approaching and doing audits as well to the suppliers, and we are indeed finding very good feedback. In the beginning, it is more like a cultural and a challenge, because if you approach any supplier of any type of business, the first reaction is that the people thinks that you wanna find out details about their supply, or where do they buy from, what price. So there is always a initial cultural challenge, but since more than 2 years, we are doing this work going back to the supply chain, and we are being able to find very good results. That, for example, when we ask them traceability back to the birth farm, which is a big challenge, because usually there is 2 or 3 farms involved since the cattle is born. You have to have a proper mechanism to have this information flow. And what we are mostly finding out is that the majority, great majority of the farmers, they are already very organized, because they do need to know the farm business, the ranching business is very competitive as well. So for them to have the proper productivity of the animals and this yield that they need to have a good yield of the meat, they need to track what was the mother cow of the animal, with who did that cow, with which type of bull did it cross to have that good performance. So they already have a very good control system, and what we are facing now is a more a way to document it and have the proper flow of the information the way the market is requiring. So we are finding that great majority of the supply chain here is very well organized. And in terms of the deforestation and this type of situation, we are finding very few farmers, ranchers with this type of issue. And in the end of the day, farmers or ranchers that are not legal or are not properly documented their land or is okay, they don't have access to finance, they don't have access to many of the things that are necessary for them to have a good performance of their cattle raising. So in the end of the day, they are already they are getting out and out of the operation, the business, because they are not capable to compete with organized and good ranchers.
I think the other day, when we were speaking a few days ago, and you were trying to give a little, because I think, like everything in the world, we hear the bad stories that reflect badly on our industry. We don't always hear the good things. And I think I found it interesting. You were explaining how was it in the 1970s that the ranchers were given money to move
Yes.
to set up industrial areas.
Yeah, this is one of the things that is part of the challenge. There are some lands that are considered illegal, for example, because it's been in a justice fight for years. But in the 70s, let's say, or before, Brazil is a young country if we see historically, and this north part of Brazil and this northwest part of Brazil, it was very inhabited for many years. And in the 70s, the government was stimulating people to move there to take, let's say, prosperity to the region. So, for example, Manaus, which is the capital of the Amazonia state, there is a industrial complex there with many big companies like Honda, the automotive companies, motorcycle companies, many different types of companies, because they wanted to bring development to that region. So the government would say, come here and we will give you the land. But for we give you the land, you need to produce something, or produce plantation, or have an industry or whatever. But still, as I said before, Brazil has a very strict legislation. So, for example, in the south of Brazil, which is a more developed area, any rancher or any farm, they need to keep a protected reserve of original forest. So here in the south is around 20%. As you go further up, this amount of forest that needs to be preserved in your property increases. So if you have a land in a state like Rondônia, you can only use 20% of your land. 80% you must to preserve as original forest. So there is this challenge that today some people say, you took more than what you could of the trees, but now you have to replant. So there is this type of confusion. But as I said, many ranchers, many farmers are getting organized. I received some type of indicator that indicates that 2% only of the ranchers in Brazil are in a illegal condition. So it's a very small amount, and I'm sure many people are working to get at each time better. And also another thing that is helping is that in the last 3 years, many slaughterhouses were licensed to export meat. So these are also helping them to be sensitive to the international market and understand their need to get more organized and supply the documentation.
Thank you, Claudia. Just thinking we've got some questions coming in through the remote.
Yeah, it was more of a comment. Daryl Cassigan was just said on here that quality and grading is a major factor, along with leather coming in as a discrete, somewhat irregular shape. As such, factories and brands want materials on a roll that are perfect to gain maximum cutting yields. These materials will appeal from that aspect alone, which I think is a fair.
I mean, I think that's always been the challenge, isn't it? We've got an irregular material for making uniform products. But,
yeah, I don't think that's probably a problem with the leather trade. As you well know, there's a situation, Ken knows from Satrax.
Sorry, I didn't understood well the question.
I think, Flavio, it's a comment. It's a comment from one of our remote attendees saying about the challenge of the leather being an irregular shape, and you could see the appeal of materials that come on a roll or come in a sheet form in terms of being uniform. And we've just got Ken Noakes.
It's fairly, yes, that is true, but it's not. I don't think it's a big factor. I think it's fairly irrelevant because there are ways for the leather manufacturer and shoe manufacturer to grade and to agree on the different grades and to work perfectly harmoniously together. I think some of the earlier things you were saying about how you can feed through some of the features, the earlier features of the leather through so it gets into the marketing area is very important, because I was in a shoe factory recently, and in that factory, when you buy shoes, you get a little certificate which shows, or you should do, which shows what the upper is, what the lining is, and what the sole is. And I think it's very important that the leather industry pushes all the most important. I bought some boots recently, and it's got the tag hanging on it. It says that they're water resistant. All right, that's because of other reasons, but where the leather's from and the sustainability and that sort of thing. I think there's more room for the industry to do that. The thing that concerns me, just one final thing. The thing that concerns me with this is when I went into this factory recently, and this is coming in, there are more people talking about terms of vegan footwear, and they're using the term vegan leather. Now, I'm interested to know whether or not we think that that's legal, because when I was at Sastra, I dealt with a lot of definitions. As far as I know, vegan leather or synthetic suede, synthetic nubuck, whatever, is not legal. But certainly vegan leather, I don't think it's legal.
Yeah.
Maybe I can comment to this because it's also an answer to David's question. First, in Germany, the Leather Association tried to protect these labeling with leather, and they lost finally in the processes. So it was not successful again to have these right labeling. The second thing to your question, the problem to my opinion now, what are the competitors to the leather industry? It's the food industry, which is changing its mindset in direction of vegan. The politicians we know that regarding the carbon footprint, leather or meat industry is worse than the plant industry. So if the politician increasing the plant industry and making the meat industry regarding this footprint worse, it's clear that leather will use because it's a byproduct of the meat industry. And the food industry is, in this case, developing very, very fast. So it's just half a year ago that I heard that they now, 3-4 years ago, it was not possible to make a meat-like material from plant material. Now it's possible by a horrible combination of additives, but it's possible. And you get a bite and the smell and the touch and the taste like original meat.
But can they call it meat?
No.
It doesn't matter because it's a sausage. It's sold as sausage, and so at the end, the last argument is what is changing the mindset is it has to be cruelty-free. And this is, to my opinion, a result of the separation of the different stages of the meat industry. The slaughterhouse is separated to the cutting and separated to the final product production. You have not, as we had it in 80 years ago, your own pig in your house and you slaughter it by yourself. It's not anymore usual, and this changes the mind.
Okay, thank you, Michael. That's right. Will's got the other thing is, Will, can you keep me on time? I've got no.
Yeah, don't worry. I'll signal when you've got 10 minutes left. A question from again one of our online contributors. What are the prospects for leather-based products due to the large number of alternative products for the future?
Ooh, I'm going to ask Katie to comment. Sorry, Katie, I'm going to throw you on that one because you've come from the background of the automotive where you've been working with alternative materials and leather. Would you like to have an opinion on that one?
Yeah, I think for me, the prospects of leather is all in the ingenuity of how we approach its natural characteristics. I truly believe that the veganism push, all of these competitive aspects still don't outweigh the sustainable nature of, utilizing a byproduct. And I do believe our customers understand that if we can become competitive in the cost. And so if we think about cost as being an equal threat to veganism, if we look at both of those sides, I think a future prospect of leather would be how do we go back to not over-engineering, particularly in automotive, we see this, but I think, when we go and shop for shoes and bags, we'll see the same thing, to not over-engineer the product to meet some durability standards that are where we are matching to a vinyl, that we are matching to an additional material, but yet we go back to creating a space for where leather has its own characteristics that it embodies and is unique in that space. And so, for example, I think there's ways to market leather in the future prospects for, let's say, you're looking at a very, vehicle that's going to be taking you through the mountains on your hiking trails. Well, there's an opportunity to look at the natural attributes of leather and maybe the scars and the natural aspects of including some of those things may be an added benefit for how we sell the leather and how it's actually portrayed in the vehicle. I think interweaving the materials together and maybe partnering with those that are additional materials and going in with an idea of how can we work together. I think technology and bringing technology to leather is another important part. With my experience with Lear, they were over trim as well as the seat structure, and being exposed to all of the offerings that they have in terms of the technology of smart seating. And when you sit into the seat, it can actually understand your body biometrics. Having leather have a space for those types of technology advancements, and interweaving ourselves into the future of technology and where leather can maybe be a very good tactile addition and something that people can interact with much better than maybe an alternative or additional material. Those are all spaces that I think leather has to begin to differentiate itself and bring a new story to the table that's holistic, rather than going and defending against what we know are the issues. Let's go out and provide more solutions. That's a completely new idea. It goes back to kind of my original statement of proactive. Touching on the index real quick, I think if we look at the future of where leather's going, part of the discussion, and this is where I've really loved how Carrie and the cross-functional teams address the Higg index, because we have to look at how are we being measured and have that holistic story and engage with them about what are the methods that they're measuring us by. And once we begin to understand that, I think we can drive a different conversation rather than just being on the defense, but provide alternate solutions to say leather can be part of a technical solution in your vehicle. Leather can be a part of a unique crafted product. So I hope that.
Thank you, Katie. Well, I think actually, and you just led very nicely into, I'm going to pose some to Kerry, because he's sitting looking at me, because I know Leather UK there's two things really. One is the survey that you've done recently, which is very illuminating, and if you haven't read it, you really should read it. But also, I think the proactive stage from that, of where you're looking at your codes, and you'd perhaps like to give a little bit more explanation about what you're doing and working with the Leather Sellers funding, wasn't it?
Well, on the survey side, it just reinforces a lot of things that have already been said. We conducted a consumer survey in the UK beginning of this year, 2,000 people surveyed. One of the standout facts was that over 50% of people surveyed thought the cattle would be able to make leather, which would. So there's definitely a lot of education that needs to be done around leather as a material for the consumer. And I think part of the problem with these new materials, which I have to say, the wisdom is don't panic. We see these come and go. Hugo Boss made clothes out of shoes out of Pinatex a couple of years ago. They don't do it anymore, and there's a reason for that. Okay, so leather isn't going away, but it needs to be understood. Where was I going? So survey, sorry.
Survey.
I mean, there's a lot of interest. A lot of misunderstanding about the material. The work that Michael's done with Filk is part of a suite of work that's being done, being sponsored by organisations like Leather UK, COTANS, and other associations, which is going to help build this picture of information that we need so that we can demonstrate to our customers why leather is a good material. So the first part we've got here is simply the performance characteristics. Does it work? And we can see from that study there that if you're looking for something from footwear, there isn't anything that compares with leather on the available materials. Those materials are now all being tested for their biodegradability. We're going to get a very different spectrum of results with that, obviously, because something like the musket, for instance, that they tested, that material is untreated, that will disappear in seconds. But if it's not functional, then it doesn't matter. We're also looking at the bio-based content of these materials, and this is some work that's being done in Italy at the moment. It's absolutely fascinating using carbon-14 testing. Some of the apple leathers are 94% plastic. Okay, you cannot call this a plant-based material. You know, you get more apple on your shoe walking through an orchard. However, if you look at the leathers, even a heavily treated footwear upper is a maximum of 16% fossil fuel-based material, plastic. Okay, so if you can get people to understand that, you've got a waste material which you are turning into a bio-based material and biodegrade at the end of life and outperform anything else. Why wouldn't you use it? All right. The problem is this isn't understood. There's an awful lot of education that needs to be done. And I mean, obviously, I work for two associations, and also Secretary of the International Council of Tanners. I would urge you to get behind your associations, get behind Leather Naturally, get behind campaigns like Naturally, because we don't have a voice in the media yet, and we are trying very hard. We've taken on a PR company this year. We are now getting mentions in the press. You know, we've been mentioned in the Times and the Telegraph, which makes me clench my jaw slightly.
Publicity,
live with it. We have people talking about things that we're doing. If we can get that understanding across to consumers, but more importantly, probably across to our customers, then we will be on the right track. We talked earlier on about why people are moving away from leather. I think it's a hugely complicated issue. Veganism is certainly part of it. Prices is part of it as well, though. Fashion is part of it. You only have to walk down the high street to see people don't wear leather shoes anymore. Okay, talk about why people want to use new materials. Well, because they're new, and they're interesting, they're different. And if you can put a sustainable label on it, what Base Casualty said, sustainable to the consumer means license to shop. Okay, because it gives you a clear conscience. It's a weasel word these days if you can't back it up. So, rambling on, I would just say that as far as the leather is concerned, we shouldn't fear these new materials. There needs to be a range of materials. People want different things. We're not going to keep vegans happy. That's impossible because we're using animal product. Fair play to them. But the two things we should insist on is one, that they're not called leather. And to come back to Ken's question there, the answer is yes, no, maybe. In terms of is it illegal? In Brazil, yes, it's illegal. In Italy, it's maybe, depends where it comes from. In the UK, it's maybe. You go to other parts of the world, China. So we need to press for the protection of the term leather. And secondly, I forgot where I was going, sorry. Sustainability. We need to challenge any claims which are clearly unsupported. Because every time you see a new material come out, it's always negatively juxtaposed against leather. Deserto is a classic. Deserto was going to save 1 billion animals a year. Deserto will not save one animal. So we need to be much more upfront about challenging these kind of things. And the way we do that is by building these pools of data, the work that Mike was doing, the work that Gustav was doing in Italy, the work that was done with the University of Montana on the allocation basis, the work we're doing fighting Indian debts, this kind of stuff. And we will get to a point where they have to understand that this is a good material.
Thank you. I know Rainer has got his hand up. Is that correct? Rainer, are you still with us?
Just unmuting.
Yes, I am with you, of course. And I really appreciate the comments which was just made. Amazing. It's true. We don't have a vegan leather. Point one. We have materials out being called as an alternative to leather, which is basically plastics. We all know this. We do have a huge lack in consumer perception. What is leather? What is behind leather? What are the other materials beside leather? I mean, there's a huge amount of work to be done. I believe that beside leather, which again is an amazing material, other materials as well have their right to exist, if I just may explain it in my German English. Because it works. I mean, the material we have, it works. There was a fair point, bio-based. Yeah, interesting thing is bio-based is not bio-based. not subject for today, but here as well, it needs to be really carefully distinguished whether I harvest, for example, wheat and just say, okay, well, I have a field full of wheat and I just process it into sugars and I make polyester. And what? Guess what? I have polyester. So what's the difference between the polyester, right? So, I mean, people are playing, and here especially the marketing departments are playing with attributes, with words they 95% of the times don't understand, but it's great because you have to have it bio-based and vegan leather, and you just have it, and consumers just take it. And this is the big greenwashing thing, and it's more than necessary now to clean up the market, right? I mean, again, leather is super amazing. Of course, we do have black sheep, if I may, hopefully is allowed to say so. We have this, but we have as well other materials which are not plastics and which are not sheeting. So both definitely have the rights to be on the market, like the gasoline and the diesel, right? We have both machines on the market, both made it, and maybe will make it. But again, and this is, and I've mentioned this several times in address to the leather industry, and I know the time is running out. The leather industry as such, again, I'm not from the leather industry, needs to do more to communicate it in the right way about this amazing feasibility, what leather, what leather has. And
I think, Ryan, that's a perfect place to actually end, because I think you've summed up there that, we're a big world. We're a world of choice, and consumers, consumers are our customers, and we like to give them choice. We shouldn't be afraid. I mean, to paraphrase Kerry, we shouldn't be afraid of challenges, because challenges are what makes challenges lead to innovation. Personally, I always think it's a challenge is something to face. Perfect Sigourney, she was saying about challenges, and actually a challenge is a positive thing. If you use it properly, you can be frightened by it and run away, or you can get on your horse and you can jump that jump. I just think that's where we're at. We're all now facing these challenges, and we've got to get over those jumps. And we'll do that because we're a damn good industry. And we'll embrace these new materials, and we'll work alongside them, and we'll also make them work for us. So I feel that's where we're at. I'm conscious of the time. Can I thank all of our panelists? So can everybody please thank our panelists?